At Sunday dinner, my dad raised his glass and said, "I'm proud of all my kids except the one who always thought she was better." The room laughed. I didn't. I just smiled, because I knew something they didn't. By Monday morning, I'd own the company that signs his paychecks. Stay with me. This isn't just about revenge. It's about what happens when the forgotten daughter stops waiting to be seen and starts building in silence. Elena Gellhorn had just poured her second cup of coffee when the subject line popped into her inbox like a slap. Brooks Family Beach Week 2025, RSVP Now. Her thumb hovered hard, tightening like it always did when that cursed event rolled around. She opened the email without breathing. The list scrolled down: Savannah, Bryce, Uncle Nolan, even her cousin Dana, who hadn't shown up since 2012. The familiar names were all there, the predictable emojis, the thread of inside jokes, but not hers, not Elena, not even as a typo. The 10th year, 10 years of silence, of edited photos where her face used to be of empty chairs, never named, of group threads she no longer existed in. She used to ask, used to send a gentle, half-joking, "Hey, guess I didn't make the cut again" text. But they always had an answer. "You're so busy these days. We thought you wouldn't want to be bothered." Or the one that left the deepest scar. "Honestly, Elena, you're just a little too sensitive about these things." She stared at the screen until the room blurred. Outside her Santa Monica apartment window, the ocean sparkled like nothing had happened. Inside, something heavy, twisted in her chest, familiar and humiliating. Her thumb hit the side of her mug, harder than intended. The ceramic clink echoed. Elena was 38 now, vice president of people and culture at one of the top med-tech firms on the West Coast. Her name was etched on glass doors and conference agendas. Her voice carried authority. Executives listened. Boards took notes. Her LinkedIn inbox was a flood of recruiters. But none of it seemed to matter when it came to her family. Her name still vanished without explanation. Her presence still optional erasable. She leaned back in her chair, the sunlight slicing through blinds across the bookshelf. And there it was, the turquoise glass seashell, dusty but intact. It sat half buried between leadership books and a jade plant clinging to life. Her grandmother had given it to her when she was 10. Said it reminded her of the ocean's quiet strength. "You're like this," Grandma had whispered back then, beautiful, unassuming, but impossible to break if someone tried. But even Grandma, the only person who had ever truly seen her, had been gone now for 8 years. After that, Savannah had inherited the title of family. Darling, the golden child, the curated soul, the one Mom introduced at brunches as my rock, Elena. She was the one who moved out west. She took a breath, letting the memories drift in, uninvited but insistent. Savannah getting the lead role in the school play and their mother bringing balloons. Elena winning her science fair and getting told, "Try to smile more in photos." Honey, Savannah's paintings were framed, Elena's writing, too dramatic. At 16, Elena had gotten into the honors program, no celebration. At 18, Savannah dyed her hair pink and their father called it bold. Once during a 4th of July picnic, a relative handed Elena a disposable camera and said, "You're good at taking pictures." She didn't realize until hours later that no one had taken a photo of her all day. The ache wasn't new. It was an old bruise pressed fresh again. She opened the family thread, still active, still full of laughing gifs and blurry beach throwbacks. Her name was never tagged, her updates never responded to. But when her niece needed college recommendations last year, guess who got the call? "Because you're so successful," Savannah had said. Funny how success only mattered when it could be leveraged. Not when she asked for space. Not when she cried over being forgotten. Not when she offered to host once and her mother said, "Sweetheart, we're used to doing things the Southern way." Elena stood moving to the window, letting the breeze touch her face. It smelled like summer already, the same summer that once meant saltwater curls and Grandma's sun-warmed porch. Now it meant silence. A part of her wanted to scream. To call Savannah and demand an answer? To forward the email with a simple, "Again," but she didn't. Not this time, because something else stirred inside her chest now, not grief, not even anger. Clarity. Being successful didn't mean being seen, not in her family, but maybe it could mean seeing yourself, and that was where her story could begin again. Elena turned from the window and walked to her desk. She didn't reply to the email, didn't text anyone. She just opened a bookmarked tab. It was still there. Ocean Pines Estate, off-market listing. Her grandmother's old beach house. The one where they used to eat watermelon on the porch swing. The one where Elena first learned to write her name in seashells across the sand. Now it was on the market again. No one had told her. But maybe that was the point. Because for the first time in years, Elena didn't want to ask for a seat at the table. She wanted to own the house the table sat in. And this time, they'd have to say her name at the front desk. The turquoise glass shell sat quietly on Elena's bookshelf, nestled between old leadership manuals and a half-alive jade plant. The light from the window caught the ridges of the shell, casting fractured patterns of blue and sea green across the white desk. It was the only thing in that apartment that had survived every move, every phase, every promotion. She had been 10 when her grandmother gave it to her. They were sitting on the porch of the beach house, that beach house watching the tide roll in. Grandma had pulled the glass shell from her purse like it was treasure. "It reminded me of you," she'd said, placing it in Elena's hands. "Quiet, strong, looks delicate, but it'll outlast every storm if you listen closely." Back then, Elena believed her. Now, staring at the shell, she realized it had become less of a keepsake and more of a question. Was she still that girl? Or had the world succeeded in sanding down the edges? The email still sat open on her screen. Brooks Family Beach Week, 2025. No retraction, no correction. Just proof. Proof that she was once again an afterthought, or worse, erased. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a pattern, a ritual exclusion, a kind of soft cruelty only family could perfect. She picked up the shell, feeling the cool glass press against her palm. How many times had she tried to make them see her? Through awards, jobs, careful check-ins, birthday gifts delivered on time, even when no one remembered hers. And still, she remained the too-much daughter, too serious, too sensitive, too far away, too inconvenient to invite. She didn't cry this time, not like the second year or the fifth. She just sat. The ocean breeze fluttered through the window, rustling the corner of a yellowed newspaper clipping tacked to the fridge, a piece about her promotion to vice president. Her mother hadn't acknowledged it, but a former high school teacher had mailed her the article with a note. "I always knew you'd rise quietly." Elena turned back to her laptop. The tab was still open from earlier Ocean Pines Estate. Off-market. Listing. It wasn't coincidence, it was strategy. The family wasn't just planning a beach week. They were quietly unloading the very house that held her best memories. No group text, no vote, no conversation. Just a quiet disappearing act. She clicked through the listing again. Hardwood floors. Wraparound porch, sunset views. She could still see her 10-year-old self tracing letters into the sand, while Grandma sipped iced tea and read aloud from Steinbeck. That was the summer Savannah called her dramatic for crying after being left out of a cousin's game. That was also the summer Grandma had looked her straight in the eyes and said, "One day they'll wish they had listened to you." Elena had almost forgotten that. But now she remembered it with razor clarity. She didn't call her mother. Didn't forward the email. Didn't text Savannah to ask why she was erased again. Because the truth was louder than any confrontation, and she had no intention of screaming. Instead, she opened a private tab and typed the agent's contact information into her CRM. Her fingers didn't tremble. She filled in her details. Full name, private email. Business line, discretion requested. Interested in discreet conversation regarding property acquisition. Familiar with site timeline, flexible, prefer off-market terms. Let me know when you're free to speak. Click sent. No one in her family would hear the click, but it was thunder to her. She closed the laptop softly as if sealing a vow. Then she got up, walked to her dresser, and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside a flash drive marked ELG Personal Financials. She inserted it into the laptop and began reviewing liquid savings stock options, vested bonuses, tax-shielded holdings. She had enough, more than enough, and not just financially. She had enough silence in her bloodstream now to know how to weaponize it. She wasn't going to yell across the table. She was going to buy the table. A breeze swept in again. She turned back to the glass shell still glinting like a promise. She reached for it, held it up to the light. Quiet, strong. The words echoed. In that moment, she didn't feel like someone fighting for inclusion. She felt like someone preparing to own the place they were excluded from the house, the story, the space. This wasn't about revenge, it was about reclamation. Elena placed the shell back on its shelf, gently, almost ceremonially. Then she turned off her phone. She wouldn't be replying to the family thread. She wouldn't ask why they forgot her. She wouldn't explain herself. You don't scream when you know you'll move in silence. You just begin. And she just had. The storage unit smelled like time. Dustwood and the lingering scent of lavender sachets, the kind her grandmother used to tuck inside linen drawers. Elena stood still for a moment in the cool, dim light, watching tiny particles drift through the air like ghosts, Unit 27B. She hadn't opened it in nearly 6 years. She unlatched the metal lock and rolled up the door with a groan that echoed off the concrete walls. Inside stacks of boxes from old apartments, books from college, a forgotten chair, and at the back, wrapped in a navy quilt, was the cedar trunk, the one Grandma Ruth had given her. The one her mother had said was too sentimental to throw away, but not important enough to keep in the house. Elena dragged the trunk forward, knelt, and lifted the lid. There, between brittle photographs and an old scrapbook, was the envelope, cream-colored, tied with twine, marked in soft blue ink. For Elena, only when you stop asking for permission. She stared at it for a long moment before opening it. Inside was a handwritten letter and a thick packet of papers, some notarized, some yellowed at the edges. She unfolded the letter first. My Elena, if you're reading this, it means something in you has shifted. Maybe you've stopped asking to be invited. Maybe you've realized silence isn't always surrender. I tried to leave a piece of myself behind for you, a safeguard. I saw how they treated you, the way your voice was always the one talked over, the way your kindness was mistaken for weakness. This trust document is real legal binding. There's a clause tucked at the end designed for one person only. You, it's called a failsafe. If your mother or uncle default on taxes or neglect the property maintenance for more than one fiscal cycle, the ownership interest passes quietly fully to the named heir you. They laughed when I insisted on it, said it was dramatic. But I knew better. I knew how they'd forget you until it was too late. I love you not loudly, but always, Grandma. Ruth. Elena swallowed. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the trust papers. It was there just as the letter said on page 9, under contingency provisions. A clear clause, obscure in legalese but unmistakable in meaning. In the event that the existing deed holders fail to remit taxes, neglect routine maintenance, or default on insurance policies related to the property, full controlling interest shall revert to beneficiary B, Elena Grace Brooks, effective immediately and without contest. She reread it. Then again, the breath left her lungs slowly, like someone letting go of a weight they'd carried for too long. This was her door in, not through begging, not through confrontation, but through the law her grandmother left like breadcrumbs in a forest of omission. And they hadn't even noticed. Back at her apartment, she scanned the documents meticulously and scheduled a consultation at McKinley & Rhodes, a boutique law firm that specialized in estate enforcement and quiet title transfers. The partner she met with was a seasoned attorney in his 60s, with a voice like gravel and a face that looked like it had seen every kind of family betrayal. He reviewed the clause slowly, carefully. When he looked up, there was a glint of something between surprise and respect in his eyes. Most people never even read this far, he said, tapping the clause with a gold pen. But your grandmother was a smart woman. This failsafe isn't just enforceable, it's airtight. Elena nodded, silent. Has the family defaulted? Yes, she replied, sliding over a folder with copies of county records, unpaid tax receipts, lapsed property insurance notices, all public record easily obtained. They had neglected the house completely, using it as a summer prop while ignoring every responsibility that came with it. "Then this is yours," the lawyer said. "We file this quietly. No fanfare. In 21 business days, you'll have legal controlling interest. They won't know until you tell them, or until it shows up in the county registry." He paused. "What would you like to do with it?" Elena looked down at her hands, then back at him. "I want it transferred. All of it. No delays, and I want their names removed." He studied her face, then nodded. "You're not doing this to hurt them, are you?" "No," she said. "I'm doing it because they never thought I could." He smiled slowly. "The ones they erase quietly," he said, quoting softly, "might return with the title deed in hand." She met his gaze. Exactly as the paperwork was filed, a strange stillness filled her. She didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. She just felt steady. Her grandmother had seen the erasure coming long before Elena had a name for it. She'd sewn protection into the very structure of the family's legacy for the one they'd all pretend wasn't there, and now the girl they dismissed was about to sign her name, where none of them could erase it again. Back home that night, Elena placed the envelope and the shell side by side on her bookshelf. She poured herself a glass of water. No champagne, no dramatic toast, just quiet. The kind of quiet you feel when the winds shift in your favor for the first time in a long, long time. The family reunion was set for the second weekend in July, same as it had been for over 2 decades. It was practically tradition at this point, the emails exchanged months in advance. Savannah coordinating activities with her usual flair Uncle Ben, booking the cornhole tournament, and always someone creating a Spotify playlist titled Brooke's Summer Vibes. Elena had never once been included in that planning thread. And this year, as expected, she wasn't. The email had come from Savannah's personal Gmail subject line, room assignments, plus food allergies. Brooks Beach Week, 2025. Elena's name was of course absent. But this year, something was different. This year she owned the house. She hadn't told them. There'd been no confrontation, no announcement, no burst of drama. Instead, she'd taken the paperwork from the law firm, scanned the county registry, confirming the title transfer, and quietly sent a single email to the property management agency that handled seasonal bookings for the beach house. To Valerie Stewart, property coordinator, Oak & Tides Management, subject property access confirmation, Ocean Bluff residence. Dear Valerie, please confirm reservation and check-in protocol for Miss E. Gellhorn, primary deed holder and sole beneficiary of Ocean Bluff property. Ref ID num 084726. Guest to arrive July 12th. Departure July 15th. Please update all digital access points and welcome registry to reflect this. Regards E.G. Brooks. She received a reply the same afternoon. Confirmed. Reservation has been updated to reflect Miss Gellhorn's status. Welcome materials will be prepared accordingly. Let us know if you'd like to extend your stay or adjust guest privileges. Val. Elena closed the laptop with a quiet satisfaction. She didn't need to warn them, they would find out soon enough at the front desk, no less. She imagined it vividly. Savannah rolling up in her gold SUV sunglasses perched on her head, rattling off the guest list like a high society maitre d'. Her mother Iris hovering nearby asking if someone remembered to bring the family potato salad bowl. Her brothers already arguing over who got which bedroom. And then the front desk clerk leaning forward with polite confusion. "I'm sorry, but only those listed under Miss Gellhorn's guest registration can be granted keycards. That would be the moment, no screaming, no showdowns. Just one perfectly placed name, spoken aloud, not as a footnote, not as a forgotten sibling, but as the one who held the deed. Elena spent the next 2 days finalizing her stay, opting for a pre-stocked fridge-firm pillows and a bottle of Perrier on ice. It wasn't indulgence, it was reclaiming space. A space that had once made her feel small. Erased, disposable. She hadn't stepped foot in that house since the summer of her junior year, when Savannah had cropped her out of a family photo before posting it online with the caption, "All the siblings that matter." Elena remembered standing in the hallway that day, towel still draped over her shoulder, watching the edited version of her own history go live. She had been written out without a single conversation, so now she wasn't asking for one. She booked the master suite, the one with the ocean view and the private deck, the same room her father had claimed every summer, declaring patriarch gets the porch swing. Let him arrive and realize the porch swing no longer belonged to him. Let them all feel the chill of arriving somewhere they thought was theirs, only to find the rules had changed. This time Elena had written the rules. On the morning of July 9th, she received a mass text in the old family group chat Savannah. Just 3 more days until Brooks Beach Week carpool list is final. Don't forget your SPF and family trivia cards. Elena read it, said nothing. She was no longer waiting for an invitation. She was making the guest list. 3 hours later, the property manager emailed again to confirm keycard smart lock reprogramming and towel preferences. Elena responded with one line, "Please leave the master suite key in an envelope labeled Miss E. Gellhorn. They'll know who I am." She sat back, hands folded, and exhaled. This was no longer about revenge. It wasn't about being petty or proving a point. It was about showing up in her own life and choosing where she got to sit. For too long, she'd been the one left off lists out of photos beneath the radar. Now she was on the deed in the registry and at the front of the welcome binder under property owner. Not because she asked for validation, but because she moved in silence, and the silence delivered power. On July 11th, as her family packed suitcases, loaded trunks, and filled coolers with soda and beach snacks, Elena folded 2 linen dresses, a sun hat, and a small leather-bound journal into her weekend bag. She locked her apartment door and left with nothing loud, no declarations, no texts, just the quiet resolve of someone who had been forgotten for so long and would now be impossible to overlook. Tomorrow her name would be said where it had never been spoken before. At the desk, on the record. With authority, the sun hit the shore with the kind of soft warmth that felt like nostalgia. The wind was salty and lazy, the kind that usually made the Brooks family reunion feel like a postcard come to life. It was July 12th, check-in day at Ocean Bluff. Savannah was the first to arrive as always, her gold SUV parked neatly beside the flower bed. She wore her usual linen romper designer sunglasses pushed up on her head, clipboard in hand like she was hosting a charity gala rather than a family beach weekend. Behind her, Uncle Ben's pickup rumbled in. Then came Ryan with his surfboard, his girlfriend, and his ego in tow. Laughter spilled from the group like soda from a shaken can. Inside the lobby of the beachfront rental, the mood was light anticipatory. Savannah strolled to the front desk and tapped her manicured nails lightly against the counter. "Hi there, Brooks party checking in. We should have the whole place." The receptionist, a soft-spoken young woman with a neat bun and a name tag that read, Rosa smiled professionally. She glanced at the computer screen. "Of course. May I have the name under the reservation?" Savannah gave a short, performative laugh. "It's probably under my name, Savannah Brooks, or maybe my dad, Roger Brooks." Rosa's smile tightened politely. She typed a few more words. "I'm sorry, I don't have a reservation under those names." Savannah blinked. "Check again. We do this every year." Rosa nodded and rechecked slower this time. "No, I'm sorry. The property is reserved exclusively this weekend for one party. All access codes, keys, and amenities are under Miss Elena Gellhorn." A stillness settled over the lobby. Roger Brooks, father patriarch, self-declared. King of the porch swing stepped forward. "Who?" Rosa straightened. "Miss Elena?" "Gellhorn," she repeated. "She's listed as the primary owner and sole authorized guest for the master suite and surrounding areas. No other names were provided." There was a beat of silence, long and sharp. Savannah opened her mouth, closed it. Uncle Ben scratched his head. Ryan muttered something under his breath. Then from behind them, the automatic doors slid open, and Elena walked in. She wasn't overdressed, a simple white blouse, loose linen trousers, hair pulled back with soft curls slipping free. No heels, no entrance music, just the rhythm of her own steps echoing across the marble floor. She walked past the family one by one, unhurried, unfazed. No dramatic pause. No need. She reached the counter and offered a small, genuine smile to Rosa. "I believe there's a welcome envelope for me." Rosa immediately retrieved it. Yes, Miss Gellhorn, we've prepared everything, Wi-Fi codes, key cards, and a chilled bottle of Perrier waiting in the suite. Perfect, Elena said, accepting the envelope. Then, only then, she turned to face them, her family. Savannah's cheeks were blotched with confusion. Roger stood with his arms slightly raised, as if trying to understand what spell he'd walked into. Ryan looked as though someone had uninvited him to his own party. Elena didn't gloat. She didn't explain. She let the silence sit. And then she said calmly, "You forgot to CC me." "I didn't." That was it. One sentence. And it rippled like thunder. No accusations, no tears. No long monologues about exclusion or old wounds. Just the quiet assertion of facts. A fact with a deed behind it. A fact that now held the keys. "Wait!" Savannah stammered, eyes darting to Rosa, then back to Elena. You bought the house?" Elena tilted her head slightly. "I didn't buy it. I inherited it. Technically, I executed a trust clause that Grandma put in place years ago, one that activates when taxes lapse or maintenance is neglected." She glanced at her father, which it was. Roger opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Rosa, sensing the tension, gave a quiet nod and stepped away from the counter to check the back. Elena turned toward the exit. "Enjoy your weekend," she said softly, not mockingly. "Just real. I'll be in the master suite. Please don't disturb me unless it's an emergency, or unless you found my name on your next email list." She didn't wait for a reply. She walked out with the envelope in hand and the breeze catching her shirt as if the air itself had cleared a path. Behind her, the silence thickened. It wasn't just confusion now. It was realization. All those years of birthday cards not sent. All the chairs she wasn't offered at holiday tables. All the memories built around her absence. And now all it took was one name on one envelope to unravel it. The porch had always faced the sea. It was the kind of view that made you believe time could slow down if you just breathed deep enough. Elena stood barefoot on the weathered wood, the salt-laced wind tugging at her sleeves. Her fingers curled around a tangle of rope and broken shells, the old wind chime. It had been buried in the utility drawer of the back closet beneath faded towels and mismatched tools. No one had touched in years. The string was frayed. The shells, once white and sea-glossed, were now dulled by dust, but still intact. One of them still bore the tiny initials, E.G., written in blue marker with a hand too small to spell her full name. Her grandmother had helped her make it the summer Elena turned 9. She remembered sitting cross-legged on the porch, sorting through a bucket of shells while her brothers played tag, and the adults grilled burgers. Everyone else had laughed, shouted, and danced in the yard. But Elena and her grandmother had built something quieter. "This one sings in wind," her grandmother had said, holding up a cracked, curved piece. "Not the prettiest, but it carries the best sound." It had been their project, their secret thing. When it was finished, they'd hung it together under the eaves of the porch, and for the rest of that summer, it had whispered in every breeze like a lullaby, just for Elena. But after her grandmother passed, the wind chime had been taken down. No one mentioned it, no one asked. It was quietly replaced by a wind spinner that Savannah had ordered from an online catalog, modern, sleek, soulless. That's when Elena had known her memories weren't part of this house anymore. She'd been edited out, one childhood shell at a time. Now, standing here again, she knew what she needed to do. She knelt at the corner beam of the porch where the salt had chipped away the white paint in delicate flakes. Her hands moved slowly, reverently tying the old rope to a rusted hook that had once held the chime so long ago. It wasn't a perfect knot. The rope slipped once before holding steady, but that felt right and perfect, earned. The shells clinked softly as the wind picked up each note, gentle, hesitant, then fuller, the kind of sound you had to lean in to notice. Not demanding, not showy, just true. Behind her, the house was quiet. She had left the front door slightly ajar, and the echo of ocean waves folded inside, like music under wallpaper. The family, now fully aware that the house was no longer theirs, had retreated to a nearby rental across the street. There had been no apologies. No one knocked. but the silence from them spoke louder than any doorbell ever could. And that was fine. Elena wasn't here for a confrontation. She was here for reclamation. She pulled out a small envelope from her pocket, the one her grandmother had addressed years ago, for Elena when you stop asking for permission. Inside was a short note. You won't be everyone's favorite. You won't always be invited. But this house, this porch, this wind, they've always known your name. You don't have to yell, baby girl, just stand still long enough and you'll hear that you belong. Elena pressed the letter to her chest. For the first time in a long while, she let herself breathe, not out of exhaustion but release, the kind that settles in your bones when you finally stop proving and start existing. She stepped back to admire the chime. It danced lightly, the shells clicking together like tiny handshakes. She didn't need the whole family to see it. She just needed herself to. Inside, she unpacked the last of her things into the master suite. She moved slowly, not because she was tired, but because she wanted every item to land with intention. A stack of books by the windowsill, a framed photo of her and her grandmother at the local market, their arms full of tangerines and wildflowers. A coffee mug that said, "Writer at work." Every object was a flag, planted in the soil of her own becoming. She found the linen curtains in the hall closet, the ones her mother always insisted were too outdated and had tried to replace Elena, hung them in the living room anyway. They smelled faintly of lavender and sun. She kept the door open as she worked, letting the wind chimes sing to the ocean again. By the time sunset arrived, the sky bled into apricot and honey. The chime echoed faintly like a heartbeat, not ready to quit. Elena stood again on the porch, this time with a glass of wine in one hand, her grandmother's journal in the other. She read quietly under the dim porch light as the last seagulls glided home. Some people inherit houses, others inherit stories, and the rare few they inherit both and turn them into legacy. The porch creaked gently beneath her bare feet. The house didn't feel haunted by the past anymore. It didn't feel borrowed or defended. It felt hers, a place she didn't have to fight to be seen in, not because she'd forced them to see her, but because she'd finally stopped needing them to. The first message came the morning after Elena hung the wind chime. It was from her cousin Natalie, always the first to carry news true or not. The subject line read simply, "What happened?" The body of the email was longer, messier, a string of questions, confusion, and veiled accusations dressed as curiosity. Then came one from her uncle. "We would have appreciated a heads up before you blindsided the family like that." By mid-afternoon, 3 more emails were waiting. One from her aunt, one from her brother, and one from her sister. Savannah filled with righteous fury, thinly veiled as concern. "Elena, this feels incredibly hostile. I don't know why you would do something so calculated. You've always been dramatic, but this is beyond Dad's blood pressure went up after you left. Is that what you wanted? Was it worth it?" Elena read the email once, then again slowly. Then she closed her laptop. She didn't reply. Instead, she made tea peppermint, the kind her grandmother used to brew on stormy days. She sat in the corner armchair of the master suite with a blanket across her lap and let the warmth soak into her chest like a quiet balm. She didn't need to defend herself. The truth didn't require a rebuttal. By evening, the calls began. They started with unknown numbers, first blocked, then Savannah, then her mother. The screen lit up again and again. She didn't answer, not out of malice, but out of peace. She wasn't going to let their panic rewrite the story. She had said what she needed to say, without words, without yelling, without spectacle. A single sentence, that's all she allowed herself. "Thank you for reminding me why I left." She sent it from a clean, unfiltered Gmail account. No subject line, no signature, just the one sentence. That night, the phone stopped ringing. For a moment, the quiet felt like a vacuum, but soon it settled into something softer, not absence, clarity. The next morning, she found a letter in the mailbox by the gate. A real one. Handwritten. No return address. But she recognized the cursive instantly. It was her mother's, the same looping script that used to appear on her lunchbox notes in elementary school and on birthday cards that always ended with "Love you more than you know." She sat with the letter unopened for nearly an hour, turning it over in her hands. She could imagine every word already. apologies wrapped in excuses, regret laced with revision, a few scattered lines about misunderstanding, perhaps an appeal to come back for the next reunion, just to talk. She didn't open it. Not yet. She placed it gently in the drawer beside her bed, not out of dismissal, but out of preservation. Some wounds don't need to be picked open. Some stories are better honored in stillness. That drawer lined in velvet filled with old bookmarks and Polaroids became a shrine of sorts, not to what had been lost, but to what she'd reclaimed, her voice, her dignity, her right to walk away without explanation. Over the next week, she moved through the house like someone reacquainting themselves with a language they once forgot. She played old records, cooked simple meals, watered plants, walked the shoreline every morning barefoot. She never told anyone where she was. She never posted a photo or made a statement. And yet the world began to turn differently. From a distance, her absence echoed louder than any confrontation could have. A distant cousin messaged her on Instagram. "Just want to say I admire what you did." It was brave. "I wish I had the courage to do the same with my family." A former classmate wrote, "Your silence." It said everything. Respect. These weren't people she was close to, but somehow they saw her more clearly than those who shared her blood. Because sometimes the boldest move isn't shouting back, it's walking away and leaving the door open, not for reconciliation, but for reflection. One afternoon, a package arrived at the front door. No note, just a small box wrapped in craft paper, inside a single ceramic mug with the words, "Peace is power." Whether it came from a stranger or someone within the family she didn't know, but she used it that evening, sipping tea on the porch while the wind chime whispered against the sea. And still, she didn't write back. Not to her sister, not to her father, not even to her mother. Because what she had finally learned was, this: you can forgive someone without letting them interrupt your silence. You can keep a letter without sending one back. You can love the memory of someone without re-entering their present chaos. Forgiveness, she'd realized, was not an invitation. It was a decision. Quiet, private, and deeply sacred. So she wrote nothing. She lived, and the wind carried the rest. The air was salt-sweet and full of light when the first guest arrived. It was early, just past 10 in the morning, but Elena was already on the porch in bare feet, tying ribbons to the railing in soft hues of blue and gold, the kind of colors her grandmother used to call sky-safe. Calming anchored quietly alive. She called it a party, but really it was something else entirely. A rebirth. Not the kind with candles and cake and loud music, but with open doors, open windows, and people who had stayed even when she had nothing to give. The wooden sign above the gate was hand-carved. She'd had it made quietly weeks earlier. This home belongs to Elena Gellhorn. For the first time in her adult life, the name didn't feel borrowed. It didn't feel like an echo of someone else's expectation or shame. It felt real, rooted hers. She hadn't invited her family, not out of spite, just clarity. This celebration wasn't for the ones who ignored her when she was silent. It was for those who had heard her even then. By noon, the porch was filled with soft conversation and clinking glasses. Savannah was there, of course, the only cousin who had ever looked at her like a person, not a problem to be solved. Naomi. Her college roommate had flown in from Denver. Jamal from the startup team brought a lemon tart with her name piped in white icing across the top. They didn't ask questions about the past. They didn't prod for gossip or moral victories. They simply showed up with kindness, with warmth, with reverence for the quiet resilience that had carried her this far. Later, someone asked, what made her choose this house? She only smiled, looked toward the wind chime that still sang in soft breezes above the porch. Because this place remembered me, even when the people didn't. As the sun began its slow descent over the horizon, the gathering moved to the backyard. Blankets were spread on the grass, and laughter rang out without needing to be loud. One by one, her friends toasted, not to her success, not to revenge, but to her return, to the woman who became visible to herself before anyone else could. To Elena, who held her silence like a sword and now holds peace like a crown. She didn't cry, but her throat ached the way it does when you feel truly seen. When it was her turn, she stood in front of the fire pit, wind brushing her dress against her legs. The ocean whispered behind her, and for once, it felt like applause. She cleared her throat softly. I used to think my name didn't matter, that if no one said it with pride, maybe it wasn't worth much. I thought silence meant absence, but it doesn't. Sometimes silence is a seed. You just have to wait for it to grow. Roots. She paused. Her voice didn't shake. This home doesn't fix the past. It doesn't erase what I lived through, but it holds me now. It shelters the version of me that doesn't need permission to exist. A beat, a breath. I don't need anyone else to say my name anymore. I can say it myself and mean it. The applause was soft but full. Later, she walked the perimeter of the property alone. It had become a ritual, a way to mark the turning of the day. The gravel crunched under her feet. The garden lights flickered on like small stars. She paused at the sign by the gate. This home belongs to Elena Gellhorn, not the forgotten daughter, not the family disappointment, not the background character in someone else's story, but the woman who chose herself. Inside, someone played Nina Simone on the old Bluetooth speaker she'd almost thrown away. A voice filled the space, smoky and unshakable. It's a new dawn. It's a new day. It's a new life for me. Elena smiled. She didn't check her phone. She didn't reread the unopened letter in the drawer. She didn't look for validation in the rearview mirror of memory. Instead, she stepped back into the light of the porch, lifted her glass, and whispered, not to anyone, but to herself. Happy birthday, Elena. And somewhere in the distance, the wind picked up just enough to make the wind chimes sing. Thank you for listening to Elena's journey, a story about rising, reclaiming, and refusing to stay silent in the face of erasure. If this story made you feel something, remember, you're not alone and you're not too much. You were just too real for the wrong room. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or left out, drop A in the comments to claim your power back. And don't forget to like, share, or subscribe, because more stories like this deserve to be heard.